What's going on, you guys? Welcome to the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple. If you're looking to create more in your life, and if you want more of anything, it's not about doing more, it's about being more. So I'm excited you're here, and I'll see you guys on the inside. Alrighty, welcome back, you guys. What's going on? Today, I've got the opportunity to unpack Wayne Mullins' genius. Wayne's a cool guy. He's a Louisianaite. He's the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing, the dad of four, and just a good dude, man. What's going on, Wayne?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Kevin?
Man, trying to stay cool in Dallas, but I think you're doing the same in Louisiana.
I feel you. It's that time of year that you just make it through, right? You look forward to that fall, winter time. That's what I live for, at least here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I remind myself that when I lived in Chicago, I promised I would never complain about the sun or the heat again. And I want to honor that that wish or thought. Man, well, kick us off with this. Tell us a little bit about just kind of how your company, Ugly Mug Marketing, came to be and how you started serving that way.
Yeah. So my journey, I guess, is like so many others. I didn't set out with this plan to build a marketing agency. I didn't have this grand vision of working with clients, from around the world or any of that stuff. Like so many people, my path, I didn't know what was around the next bend. So for me, it was about just taking the next step. And sometimes that next step for me was, on the outside, it appeared to be kind of reckless, right? But in hindsight, it was just that I was making very calculated risk. And as I took those next steps, more and more of what was around the bend, around the corner, was revealed as I kept moving down that path. So I guess that's more of the, theoretical answer to that question, not as much of the specifics, but I just think so often that as entrepreneurs, as leaders, that we get so hung up in making sure that we have the perfect future defined for us, that sometimes that paralyzes us from taking that next step.
Oh, absolutely. And man, like if I get stuck in the future, I know it creates a lot of anxiety because like I can't touch tomorrow, no matter how hard I think about it. Like I need to have vision, of course, but yeah, that's such a brilliant, like, man, there was so powerful what you just kind of dropped. Like it was so simple, but like it's not easy, right? Like, but until I'm in action, I don't have feedback and like of maybe it's not the right way, or maybe there's something I didn't even know about that existed. But if I get married to this idea of what success is, that's really dangerous. And that's the ego that wants to attach to, everything. And I'm never very powerful when the ego is involved, right? It's all force and it's hard and just reactive, replicative behavior. So has that always been kind of the way you've operated, that just jump off the cliff, build your wings on the way down?
Mm-hmm. I think by default personality makeup, that is my default. But the answer to your question in terms of how the story actually unfolded. So my degree is in marketing. I love marketing, but when I got out of school, I decided I wanted to go into sales because I believe that if I could master the art of selling and couple that with marketing, that would be a very powerful combination to have. So I spent 3 years in corporate sales, had a job for a large, I think at the time they were the second largest outdoor advertising company in the country, selling outdoor billboard space, basically. And over the course of that 3-year period, I went, Kevin, from terrible to actually really good at it. And it was as a result of my stubbornness that I kept going out, kept learning, kept growing, kept getting doors slammed in my face. It was at the end of that 3-year period, though, that I decided that I was ready for the next adventure. And that is where that next step came into play. And I didn't really understand where that next step would lead in terms of my long-term future, but I knew that I was ready for the next thing. And being that I'm in Louisiana, being that I grew up cutting grass in the summer to make a little extra money, that was the next thing for me. So, here I am with a 4-year degree in marketing. I'd spent the last 3 years in sales and I could have easily gotten another job selling, but decided to start a lawn and landscape company from scratch. And so I spent the next 3 years growing that company. And again, that was one of those situations where it's take the next step and see where the path unfolds and then just keep on down that process. To conclude the story just briefly is, after 3 years, I decided to put the company up for sale. I didn't know anything about selling a business, hired a business brokerage firm to list my company with and to sell it. Within a few weeks, they had 3 offers on the table for me. I selected one of those offers, sold the company, and it was as a result of growing that business, that lawn care company, that clients of the lawn care company and other entrepreneurs in the community noticed how fast we were growing. And so they started coming to me, asking me, what are you doing? How are you growing? And that answer, Kevin, was marketing. We were doing marketing in a very specific, very unique way. And then those conversations turned into ugly mug marketing.
Oh, dude, that's such a great like story. And I mean, it's always organic, right? That's the way anything gets built. But I think when you're just following your genius, right? And the things that are simple for you aren't simple for everybody else. And that's where I know myself included in this, a lot of my clients like get sideways is like we think that the superpowers we have are normal for everybody. And then we minimize them and don't step into them and almost like hide them. And it's, that's the human condition, I think, right? But let's talk about marketing for a second here, because a lot of the folks listening have businesses and they want to, serve more people. And like I know that one of the challenges I've run into as a business owner is a lot of people are really good about at talking about what they do, but maybe not actually. There's nothing behind the fluff. And so like it's expensive, but it's not great. So like I've fallen into that trap and it's like, man, am I just making bad buys? Like what's wrong with me? And so I was just curious, like for one, like anybody's looking to maybe bring in somebody outside to help them with marketing, what types of things would you suggest they look for first?
Yeah, the super short answer is one word. It's results, right?
Yeah.
We don't turn to someone for marketing help because we want more impressions on social media, because we want more reach, because we want more likes or shares or comments, or we not even because we want a bigger email list, right? We want the things that we believe those things will bring us. So if you're a for-profit organization, at the end of the day, those results are dollars in the bank account. And you want to look for results that say, for every dollar we invest in this thing called marketing, it better be bringing back more than $1. So, results, we live in this world though, Kevin, where results get jaded or they get hidden behind all these fancy terms, these vanity metrics, if you will, impressions, reach, view count, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? All of those things are great and they all serve a purpose and they all tell a story. But the only story that really matters are dollars in the bank account if you're a for-profit organization.
Yeah, sales, right? Like I can have 2 million followers on Instagram, but if I'm not selling anything, then I'm probably hungry. And I'm probably spending money on buying followers too. But like that's a different conversation altogether. So let's so you have a really cool one sheet I was checking out, and I was going through your Instagram and all that stuff and doing my due diligence. And one of the like comments or questions or things you had in there was like why your gorgeous website isn't working. And like I was laughing like for a friend, right? But could you could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we sell websites. We sell a lot of websites. So we do custom built, custom designed websites. And interesting thing, Kevin, is that our best salesperson, in other words, who sells the most websites for us, are the competitors of the people who come to us. So let's just say hypothetically, you own a coffee shop, Kevin, and your competitor across town gets a new website. You are on social media or you're on the web and you see this beautiful, stunning new website that this other coffee shop just got. And you then go look at yours and you're like, man, ours is terrible. We've got to do something. And so what do? You start looking for someone to help you make your website quote unquote prettier or better or whatever it may be. And I can tell you that is the absolute worst reason and worst strategy in terms of your web presence. We teach this simple thing called the 3:53 p.m. strategy. And if you want, I'll be happy just to super quickly run through that.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah. So number one, the first 3 in the 3:53 p.m. strategy is this. You've got 3 seconds to make an impression. People are going to hit your page. And if they don't like what is there, if it doesn't resonate with them, they are gone. And that's okay. If your message is so dialed in and the aesthetics of your site are so dialed in that the right people choose to stick. Remember that we don't want everyone sticking to our website. If our product, our services isn't meant for certain audiences, we don't want them wasting time trying to figure out, is this company right for me? Are they not right for me? We want them to go away as quickly as possible. Saves us a lot of time and headaches later on. The 5, so the 5 in the 353 is this, that we believe that every page should be walked through what we call the critical 5. And that's just simply 5 questions that you must answer about each page on your website. Question number 1, who is here? Now, the interesting thing about that question is every page on your website has a different who. In other words, the person who lands on your homepage is a different person than who's on your about page learning more about you. And that is a different person once they get to your contact page and they begin to fill out that contact form. See, your website, when done properly, will bring them through this journey. It will turn them in from a casual observer right on the homepage, drilling a bit deeper on maybe a product page or an about page. Then the next person, it could be the same quote unquote person, but they're in a different state of mind. So who is on this page? Most people don't ever take the time to really understand and answer that question. So who's here? Question number 2, what do we want them to do? Super, super obvious. Most people get hung up because they don't know what they want people to do on that specific page. One of the biggest mistakes is that on your homepage, people assume that people are going to land on your homepage and they're immediately going to fill their shopping cart with things, or they're immediately going to pick up the phone and call you and book a consultation or whatever it may be. We like to say that your homepage is like an airport terminal. Its goal is designed to help you get to your gate as quickly as possible. That is it. So that's the homepage. And so what do we want them to do on this particular page? When do we want them to do it is the next question. Now, the win is not always immediately. There are some instances where we need to build, we need to nurture. So that win could be a little bit further out. When do we want them to do it? How do we want them to do it? It's the next question of those 5. Do we want them to click? Do we want them to call? Do we want them to fill out a form? What do we want them to do? How do we want them to actually take that action? And then the final question in that critical 5 is this: why should they take the action? For them, not from our perspective, but from their perspective, why should they take that action? So often we're so blinded and we approach things from our perspective. We believe that everyone who meets our criteria should take that action, right? Because we love our products, we love our services, we love our businesses so much that we believe they should take the action for X, Y, or Z reason. Yeah. The question is, why should they, from their perspective?
Yeah, man, that's really powerful. So who are your favorite types of people to work with and clients to serve?
So we love working with what we call growth-minded entrepreneurs. So it doesn't matter if they're for-profit, not-for-profit. It doesn't matter if they are a Fortune 1000 company or they're the mom and pop coffee shop across the street. We love working people who are both growth-minded and entrepreneurial. And when we use the word entrepreneurial, what we specifically are meaning is they're willing to push the boundaries. They're willing to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, very cool. And I saw on your website too, you had a couple of testimonials somewhere in there. And one of them was from Chris Voss. And I was like laughing to myself. I'm like, Chris Voss, former FBI negotiator, wrote Never Split the Difference, and his genius is negotiation. And it's like, I wonder if Wayne negotiated with him. I wonder how that went. And I was just curious what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, so that experience was very interesting. So it was a Friday afternoon. I'd taken off around lunch that day, and my wife and kids were in the vehicle, and we were driving for a weekend getaway. And we were in the car, and my phone rings from this number I don't recognize. So I don't answer it. I'm notorious for not answering my phone if I don't recognize the number. Right. And so I wait a few minutes, and I see that I've got a voicemail. Check the voicemail, and it's this random guy saying, "Hey, my name's Chris Voss. I've got this book that's going to be coming out soon, and I got your name from XY. It's another person, another client of ours. And he asked me to reach out and said that you may be able to help with some of the stuff we're working on in the build up to the launch of our book." So again, I didn't know who this dude was, just some random dude who used to work at the FBI. And I called the person who referred him to me and just said, "Hey, I just got this voicemail from this person. Like, give me the rundown. Like, is this dude legit?" Not that I was questioning if he's legit, but you want kind of the
Yeah.
backstory. And he said, "Yeah, he's legit. His book is, in the final stages of editing right now at the publisher, and it's probably going to be a big deal." So I ended up calling Chris back. We talked that evening. It was a Friday evening. We talked again on Saturday and probably again on Sunday, if I remember correctly. And we began helping with just some of the preliminary marketing stuff for the launch of Never Split the Difference.
That would be really interesting. I guess it was prior to the book, so you hadn't read all his like secrets, right? So you couldn't tell when he was doing it to you. But he seems like he's pretty ethical in the way he approaches things. So I don't think he was being manipulative. But that book is so good, and
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
he did such a great job of simplifying a complex thing, which is I read a few books on negotiation, and I feel like I was more confused than when I started on most of them. But his was really really good. So good job on marketing it because I found it right, and so
Right.
a lot of other people did too. But let's shift gears for a second. I want to talk about leadership and culture. I mean, obviously, you understand, leadership's a behavior, not a position, and you know how to build a culture because if somebody bought a company you built, right, you didn't have a, you don't do that with a poor culture. And so, anyways, what uh, what were some of the things that really served you and maybe sabotaged you as a leader, building a company and creating this healthy culture?
Yeah, I would say that the very first thing that comes to mind when what sabotaged myself as a leader in building a company and a culture is ego. Um, Ego is
Yeah.
the number one thing that tripped me up and still has the tendency to trip me up, right? We want to be right. We want to be validated. Um, and that's a dangerous thing for us as leaders. The problem is, as we grow our organizations, as we build our cultures, by default, the people around us become yes men and yes women, right? And it's not because of necessarily even anything that we're doing. It's just the natural human tendency, as we are quote unquote the leader or the founder. And so if we're not careful, if we don't have people around us who challenge us, who keep our ego in check, we will become our own worst enemy. And I'm a huge believer and proponent for having an outside coach, someone outside your organization who is willing to tell you the things that other people are not willing to tell you, right? We don't need a cheerleader. Sure, it's good to get motivation, it's good to get encouragement. That's important. But as a leader, you don't need a cheerleader to tell you how great you're doing. You need someone who's going to call you on your stuff, who's going to say, "Hey, your ego is out of line here. Hey, you are doing X, Y, or Z." There's this great window called the Johari window. Somebody can Google it. But basically, there are a lot of things out there that exist that other people can see about us, but we can't see about ourselves. And that is why it's so important to have a coach challenge you and call you out, because there's a lot of stuff I can't see, a lot of mistakes that I'm making that if I don't have that outside perspective looking in, then it's going to go unnoticed and it's going to harm me in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. But like the caveat to that is like if somebody's going to call you out, you have to be humble enough to be open to another perspective, because I know like when like you said it, like when the ego's involved, it's like I want to be right as even at the detriment of what I actually want sometimes, it's like we get so attached to these things we think are true and man, it's so powerful though. And you can just help somebody help you create a new insight, right? Or new perspective. And it's like, man, it's not because you're a bad person. It's just like nobody's right all the time. Like, even though some people may think they are, like, you're definitely not. So, what about like when it comes to just looking for a coach? Like, what do you look for in that? How do you, find somebody that resonates with you? And what kind of advice could you share with people who maybe haven't worked with a coach before and are going to go out and get one?
Yeah. So I have a very unique perspective on this. In the early days of this company and my previous company, the lawn and landscape company, I always had some form of coach in my life, someone who was there as an outsider looking in, that I went to for advice, for strategy, and whatever it may be that I was facing in the business at that time. And I've learned this lesson the hard way, that there's a very big difference between advice and opinion. And here's the difference. So when you first started a business, or when you're first in leadership and you're growing and you're trying to develop or build your business, you're going to have a lot of questions. You're going to have a lot of scenarios that come up, whether that's opportunities to pursue or whether that's challenges to overcome. And by default, we believe that if we go to other people, that we are being humble, we are being wise by going to them and asking them for feedback or for their opinion on how we should handle that particular situation. And anyone can give you their opinion, right? So you can go to your parents, you can go to your neighbor next door, you could go to anybody and present them with a situation in your business, in your organization, and they will give you their opinion. The problem becomes, if we take their opinion as advice, we are jeopardizing ourselves. So the difference for me is simply this: someone who is entitled to give you advice fits one of three things. Number one, they've been in the shoes and in the situation that you are attempting to go through. That's number one. Number two, they've observed it firsthand. So in other words, maybe they weren't in that exact situation themselves, but maybe they were the CFO or the COO, or maybe they were the executive assistant. And so they witnessed what took place behind the scenes and how they navigated that situation. Or the third one would be someone who's a world-class expert. In other words, someone who spent years studying how to get to the place or overcome the challenge that you're currently facing. So for me, I always look at, where are we going, right? Where's our vision say we're going? What are the skills that I need to work on as a leader to get me to that next level? And that's where I go find the coach for. I don't find a coach for where I'm at today. I find the coach for where I want to be in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about like a community of others, like masterminds or something like that? Are you a proponent of that as well?
I am. The one caveat I have with these is that sometimes, if we're not careful, those can turn into nothing more than a party to get together and complain. I've
Yeah.
seen it time and time again, where groups of entrepreneurs get together for a quote unquote mastermind, and it really just turns into a venting session. Now, look, I get it. Like, we need to vent sometimes. We need to be able to express our frustrations. We need to talk through scenarios. And that is completely fine. If that is the intention of the group that you put together, a place to vent, a place to just share what's taking place, candid reality, I guess, nothing wrong with that. But if you're expecting a mastermind in the way that I would say like Napoleon Hill originally designed or talked about mastermind groups, it's not a venting session. It's about more strategic things. It's about laying the foundation for where you are going, not complaining about what's already taken place.
Man, that's such a great point. But like whatever you're focusing on is what you're going to create more of, however you want to say it. What you focus on
Yeah.
expands. And if I'm focused on problems, like that's all I can see. And like suddenly everyone's a problem. I'm the problem. They're the problem. And that's all ego. And it's really hard. And the ego like takes you nowhere because it's all reaction, but it burns all this energy. And so then I'm like exhausted, but I feel like I've regressed somehow, but I've like spending all this energy. And yeah, that totally is such a powerful idea, right? Like, yeah, we need to vent, right? But that's not, I didn't pay $15,000 or whatever to be in this mastermind to complain. I can complain for free, in my shower.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah, I've used a combination of, coaches, mentors. So the difference for me between a coach and a mentor is just simply, a mentor to me would be somebody who I'm probably not paying. It's somebody who's a bit down the road. Maybe they're retired at this point, and I go to them for advice. A coach, I'm always going to be paying for. A mastermind group, the same thing as we just talked about. Like, I want to surround myself with other people who are pushing, who are learning, who are growing, who are challenging themselves. I think that if we're not careful, we end up exactly what you're talking about, where we end up thinking that, we are the king or we are the queen of our empire, that whatever we say goes, and that it's right because we said so. And then we spend so much, like you were saying, time, energy, and effort defending that position that we become the stumbling block for our organization. And I know that that sounds right. That sounds good to say, right? It sounds like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But for me, that's my story. I mean, that is what I've lived in this company that I've been growing now for almost 15 years is I'm always the hindrance to the growth of the company. It's not my team. It's not the marketplace. It's not our lack of funds. It's not any of those things. It's always me. I am the bottleneck in the organization. And so until I learn to lead the person that looks back at me in the mirror, like I have no right demanding excellence from other people until I demand it from myself.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the most simple idea, right? If I want to be above average, I have to treat myself above average. And like I'm the model for people to follow. If like I'm not willing to, you know, stretch and grow and go to the unknown, how can I ask other people to do that? And I think in the past, I know I missed that when I was a young leader. I'm like, that's just telling people what to do, right? Like, do what I say. And if you don't, you're terrible. And I'm still awesome. I felt like you were talking talking to me and a lot of people I know, and you said I'm right just because I said so. Like that's gave me a nice chuckle. But all right, man, let's an effort to bring this thing in for a landing. I got a couple of quick questions and we'll send John your way. What's a favorite book to read, recommend, give away?
So two come to mind. The first one is The Choice. It is a phenomenal book. It's not really a business book, but it is a, I'm an avid reader. I probably average somewhere between 30 and 50 books a year on average. And that book is definitely in the top 10 books I've ever read.
Okay,
The
cool.
the
Who's the
second
author?
one, Dr. Edith Eger, Egar, I believe, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. And then the second book that, again, this one's more of a timing thing, I think. So it's not going to resonate with everyone. It depends on kind of where you are in your journey. It's called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weist, Wiest, if I'm not mistaken.
Very cool. Yeah, I love to read too. I've heard the choice recommended a few times now. I gotta investigate a little more if I keep hearing the same thing. But, all right, what does freedom mean to you, Wayne?
So, Kevin, I think that as entrepreneurs, sometimes we believe that there's only one type of freedom. And I've come to discover that there's actually two types of freedom. There's freedom from, and there's freedom to. And so I believe as entrepreneurs that we go into business, we pursue our dreams because we want freedom to. We want freedom to set our own schedule. We want freedom to earn as much money as we want. We want freedom to, travel the world, whatever these things may be. But the reality is that very often we only end up with freedom from. We end up with freedom from the corporate 9 to 5. We end up with freedom from our boss telling us what to do. We end up with freedom from a W-2 at the end of the year from your employer. And so I think number one, getting clear about the difference between those two types of freedom, because I think for so many leaders, so many entrepreneurs, if you sit down and actually look at the freedom you thought you were pursuing, it was those freedoms too. And yet you end up with the freedom from in your hand. And so the question is a strategic question. It is, what changes do I need to specifically make to ensure that I get the freedom to do all of those things that I wanted to do?
Oh, what a cool answer. I like that a lot. Yeah, I'm totally resonating with that. Just thinking about or how what I'm always striving for is right. Like I don't want to be told what to do in some aspect, right? Not because I'm petulant, but because I want to be creative and autonomous. And I love that answer. Thanks for sharing that. All right, last question. Where can people go to learn more about you, Wayne, connect with you, and engage with you?
The simplest place, Kevin, is our website, uglymugmarketing.com. All of our social media stuff's there, email addresses, phone numbers, all of that's in one spot.
All right, very cool. All right, actually, I have one more question for you. What's something that I could ask that I haven't that you would like to share about?
The very first thing that came to mind when you asked that was when it comes to building a company culture, what are the core ingredients that are necessary?
Ooh, what are they?
Yeah. So, number one, I think understanding the definition of culture comes from the same Latin word as to cultivate. So, it's a farming term. Like when you cultivate the soil, you have to break the hard ground. You have to make the ground fertile. You have to add nutrients. You have to add minerals. And then once you plant the seeds, your cultivating is still not done. You have to cultivate to get the weeds out, and then you harvest. And then after you harvest, you have to take the crops out or cultivate those crops back into the ground. And so number one, I think it's understanding that culture is an ever evolving, ever requiring our attention and effort. You're never going to set it and forget it. But the two ingredients that I've come to discover that make a great culture are learning to balance alignment around our vision, our mission, our values, and autonomy. And those two things are very often pulling against each other. They are kind of opposites of one coin. And it's our job as leaders to make sure that those two things work in harmony.
But I mean, that's exactly what Steve Jobs was talking about when he said, I don't hire smart people so I can tell them what to do. I hire them so they can tell us what to do. And that's the quickest way to get really talented people to go away, is telling them what to do and restricting their freedom, autonomy. It's like one of the intrinsic motivators. And like, man, I'll give up things I actually want if I feel like there's no autonomy with it. And like, man, it's brilliant.
Yeah. I think the flip side of that equation, though, what made Steve Jobs so brilliant was the alignment around the vision and mission for where Apple was going. Right. I see this so often in entrepreneurial cultures where they bring a bunch of people in, they hire a bunch of smart, talented people, and they set them loose to go do their thing. And then when they come back and report the results or deliver the thing, whatever it is they were working on, the owner, the entrepreneur, is frustrated because it's off base. It's not in alignment with the mission or the vision of where we're going. And then the person who did the work is frustrated because they poured all their time, energy, effort, all their talents into this thing. And now you are frustrated at them. So they're frustrated at you. And so it's this, this battle that we've created because we didn't balance the alignment with the autonomy.
Yeah. Well, that's some brilliant stuff, man. Thanks for sharing, Wayne. Appreciate you coming on and unpacking your genius. You guys, I would take advantage of everything he shared and definitely reach out, because Wayne's the real deal, man. Big heart, big brain. That's what we're looking for. So, man, let's get out of here. Give us one more thought and we'll roll on our way.
Yeah. My final thought would be this, that you need to learn to live the stories that you would love to tell.
Ooh, well said. All righty. We'll see y'all next time.
All righty, you guys. Thanks for making it through to the end of the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with us. Really grateful to have amazing listeners like you. Thank you guys again for listening. We love you, and we'll see you next time inside the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple.